Welcome to the deep dive. Today, well, you've brought us into a really dark one, a chilling and unfortunately enduring story in true crime. Ted Bundy.
It really is. It's a case that casts such a long shadow. And as the sources you shared point out, it's been heavily, maybe too heavily, sensationalized over the years.
Yeah, almost romanticized sometimes, which is dangerous.
Exactly. And that creates this real risk, of losing sight of the victims, the actual people affected, and the true horror of what happened. The focus just shifts inappropriately to him.
Right. So we've got quite a bit to sift through here. Articles detailing the timeline of his crimes, how he was eventually caught, the various attempts to figure out his psychology.
And there's that YouTube transcript, too, which really digs into his methods, his mindset, plus broader pieces looking at his background and, well, the huge cultural impact he ended up having.
Okay. So the goal for this deep dive isn't just to rehash the sensational stuff, right?
Not at all. We need to really dissect the core elements, understand how Bundy operated, the specific ways he did things.
And the vulnerabilities in the system back then that let him get away with it for so long.
Precisely. And the deeply disturbing psychological drivers behind his violence. But always keeping the focus on the victims and the devastating tragedy for their families.
Okay, let's start right there. Who was Ted Bundy? The sources paint this really unsettling picture, full of
Yeah.
contradictions.
They really do. That's the recurring theme, isn't it? This stark duality. On the surface, descriptions consistently mention remarkable charm, disarming politeness.
A master manipulator.
Absolutely. That ability to just easily gain trust, that's a key element to what made him so incredibly dangerous.
And the scale of the crimes. It's just staggering. Around 30 confirmed murders in the mid-70s.
That's the official count, yeah. But several sources suggest the actual number could be way higher, maybe over 100 victims.
Wow. That's hard to even comprehend.
It's a truly horrifying possibility, and it just speaks to the extensive, devastating trail he left across multiple states before he was finally executed in Florida in '89.
But the story didn't end there, obviously.
No, the reverberations certainly haven't stopped.
One of the articles had that quote from Bundy himself, calling himself the most cold-hearted son of a bitch you'll ever meet.
Yeah, such a jarring contrast to that charming persona he projected.
And intelligent, too, right? IQ of 136, reportedly. Well above average?
Yes, studied psychology, even did some law school. It's deeply unsettling to think how those abilities, that intellect, were weaponized, used for deception, for evading capture.
It really drives home that point, doesn't it? That intelligence or education doesn't mean ethical behavior or empathy.
Not at all. And that psychology background, it likely gave him a more nuanced understanding of human behavior, vulnerabilities, which he just ruthlessly exploited.
So let's get into how he lured victims. That chameleon personality seems central.
Absolutely. He was a master at exploiting, people's basic kindness, their desire to help.
The sources mention specific tactics he used again and again.
Right, like feigning injury, an arm in a sling, maybe a leg in a cast. It immediately makes someone seem vulnerable, gets sympathy.
We're just asking for help, right? Like carrying books or pretending his car was broken down, seemingly innocent stuff.
Exactly. And then there's the impersonation, posing as authority figures.
Police officers, firefighters. That's particularly chilling.
It is, because it taps into that ingrained societal trust we have. It's an almost instant way to get credibility, get compliance, without raising alarm bells.
And the car, the tan Volkswagen Beetle.
Yeah, can't forget the Beetle. Sources point out how, ordinary it looked. Unassuming. Almost like Herbie, one source said.
But it was crucial for him.
Absolutely. A seemingly harmless lure, a way to transport victims, and disturbingly, that front trunk used to conceal bodies.
God. The YouTube transcript mentioned him specifically targeting college campuses, calling them a ready haul of victims.
Yeah, it shows how calculated and predatory he was. Campuses offered anonymity, a constant stream of potential victims. Young people, often away from home, vulnerable.
And there was a specific type he looked for, wasn't there?
Disturbingly specific, yes. Young, white, middle-class women, often students, maybe 15 to 25, long hair, parted in the middle.
And several sources suggest that profile looked like a girlfriend who'd rejected him.
That's the chilling suggestion, yeah. It adds another layer to the psychology of it.
Okay, let's shift his MO, his modus operandi. The specifics here are really, really disturbing.
The pattern that comes through in the sources is initial, often brutal, incapacitation. A crowbar was common, knock them unconscious.
Then handcuffs, strangulation.
Often, yes. using what one source called a silent method. Deliberate,
Right.
minimize the chance of witnesses, immediate discovery.
And the lack of forensic evidence early on. We take DNA profiling for granted now, but back then.
Right. That played a huge role in him evading capture for so long. The fact he often left no fingerprints initially. It seems almost unbelievable now.
He was what they call an organized killer, right? The
Yeah.
YouTube transcript emphasizes that.
Highly organized, meticulous planning at each stage, abduction in one place.
Killing somewhere else, secluded.
Exactly. And then disposal of the body in yet another location. Made it incredibly hard for investigators to connect the dots between seemingly separate crimes.
The level of pre-planning is just
Mm.
chilling. Researching areas, scouting locations.
Identifying safe spots to commit the murder, remote places to dump the bodies with little chance of quick discovery. It speaks to a horrifying level of calculation, forethought.
And then the post-mortem rituals. I mean, this is incredibly grim stuff.
It really is. Sources detail him keeping bodies for extended periods, for further sexual gratification.
Doing things like shampooing their hair, applying makeup.
Yes. Accounts of him displaying decapitated heads in his apartment, sleeping with corpses until putrefaction set in.
It paints a truly terrifying picture, especially alongside his obsessive homicidal fantasies.
Absolutely.
That YouTube transcript talked about a predator phase starting in the mid-70s, suggesting an earlier, maybe more amateur phase.
Right, murders he apparently wouldn't talk about later, maybe because they were too close to home, involved younger victims perhaps.
That distinction he made himself is pretty telling, isn't it?
It really is. Whether it was some twisted pride in his later, more organized methods, or some warped internal boundary, it shows a disturbing evolution.
Them returning to crime scenes, even when police were there.
Yeah, to get belongings or just revisit the bodies. It shows this chilling sense of impunity, maybe a compulsion to relive it.
Let's run through some of the key documented crimes mentioned in the sources. It starts with Karen Sparks, January 74.
A brutal assault. Attacked in her apartment with a metal rod, sexually assaulted. She survived, thankfully, but with permanent disabilities. A stark early sign of his violence.
Then Linda Ann Healy disappeared in February 74. Jorgen Hawkins in July.
Healy's disappearance really kicked off that horrifying pattern in the Pacific Northwest. And Hawkins, taken from right behind her sorority house, shows his increasing boldness.
The Lake Sammamish State Park incident, July 74. That one's particularly striking. Kidnapping Janice Ott and Denise Naslund in broad daylight.
And using his real name, Ted.
That's just astonishing confidence. Or arrogance.
It suggests a growing belief in his own ability to manipulate, deceive, even when taking huge risks. Multiple witnesses saw him, he used his name, maybe a sense of invincibility setting in.
After that, the attacks moved to Utah, 74-75. Nancy Wilcox, Melissa Smith, Laura Ann Aim. So many names.
And it's a relentless, horrifying list. Each one a life stolen, a family destroyed. The details are crucial to understanding the brutality. Melissa Smith, possibly alive for days after abduction, found beaten, raped, strangled.
Laura Ann Aim, her face beaten beyond recognition. And he shampooed her hair afterwards.
According to the sources, yes. It underlines the sheer depravity.
Then Karen Campbell, January 75, abducted from a hotel in Snowmass Village. Body found a month later.
And then January 78, the Chi Omega sorority house attack. Infamous. Exceptionally violent.
Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy murdered. Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler brutally assaulted, but survived.
And the bite mark on Lisa Levy's body. That became critical physical evidence later on.
And Cheryl Thomas attacked the same night in her apartment, survived, but with permanent injuries.
That night seemed like a shift, didn't it? More frenzied violence. And as a result, more forensic evidence left behind.
Finally, Kimberly Leach, February 78, only 12 years old.
His final known victim. Abducted from school, sexually assaulted, murdered, body found in a pig pen. Just heartbreaking.
The YouTube source suggests he might have felt some conflict about harming children, maybe why he rarely talked about those crimes.
It's possible. His reluctance could stem from various twisted internal conflicts, yeah. But it doesn't diminish the absolute horror of it. Murdering a child, it underscores the depths of his depravity.
So why did it take so long to catch him? It seems like this really awful combination of factors.
Several critical things came together. His intelligence, definitely. His manipulative nature. He was incredibly good at lying, projecting normalcy.
That disarms suspicion.
Hugely. And initially, leaving very little forensic evidence. That was a major factor early on.
Plus, he moved around so much, right? Crossing state lines constantly.
Exactly. And the sources really hammer this point.
Hmm.
law enforcement communication and technology in the 70s.
Mm.
It just wasn't there.
No national databases relying on phone calls between states.
Hmm.
Seems archaic now.
But the YouTube transcript rightly points out how badly this hampered connecting crimes across different jurisdictions.
Yeah.
A huge problem.
And that appearance of normalcy was such an effective shield. No prior adult convictions at first. He was even rolled out as a suspect sometimes, despite tips.
It's incredible. That carefully built facade of respectability combined with the systemic police limitations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it created a perfect storm, allowed him to keep going for years.
But some key people did eventually play huge roles in stopping him. Elizabeth Klopfer, his girlfriend.
Yes, she reported her suspicions to the police multiple times. Must have been incredibly difficult. Brave.
What made her suspicious?
The sources mention her noticing strange items, a meat cleaver, surgical gloves, and his behavior becoming more disturbing. Her conscience eventually won out over the relationship.
And Rule 2, his former colleague, she also reported him.
Right, further highlighting that gap between his public image and the dark reality.
And Carol Durant, the survivor. Her testimony was crucial.
Absolutely pivotal. She survived his attempted abduction and positively identified him in a lineup. Her unwavering account gave them the evidence for that initial kidnapping and assault conviction.
That must have been a turning point.
It really was. And then Highway Patrol Officer Bob Haywood, catching him in Utah in '75 after that chase. Finding incriminating stuff in the car, another huge breakthrough setting the stage for his downfall.
And we can't forget the prison escapes. Colorado, 1977. 2 of them. So dramatic.
They really solidified that public image, didn't they? Cunning, dangerous fugitive.
How did he even manage that?
Just audacious. The first time, jumping from a second-story courthouse library window while acting as his own lawyer. And the second time, meticulously losing weight, sawing through his cell ceiling, crawling through ductwork, stealing clothes from the jailer's apartment, and just walking out.
Wow, that shows incredible resourcefulness. Terrifyingly misapplied, but still.
And a relentless determination to stay free, to keep going. The YouTube transcript really hits on the sheer audacity and planning involved there.
Okay, let's get into his psychology. The sources consistently label him a psychopath.
Yes, scoring 39 out of 40 on the Hare psychopathy checklist. That's pretty much textbook. It measures traits like a profound lack of empathy, antisocial behavior, manipulation,
He had all those.
in spades. Plus, likely antisocial personality disorder, traits of narcissistic personality disorder, manipulative, zero empathy for victims, no genuine remorse, none.
Several sources mention pornography. He confessed to a severe addiction.
Yeah, to hardcore pornography.
Yeah.
And claimed it fueled his violent fantasies. Now, the link between porn and violence is complex, debated, but his own admission points to a connection in his specific case, at least in his mind. He also talked about deep feelings of inadequacy, rejection.
And the control over victims was maybe a twisted way to compensate.
That's a strong theory, yes.
The compartmentalization is just astounding, though. Aspiring politician on one hand, brutal serial killer on the other. How does someone do that?
It suggests a profound ability to dissociate, to maintain completely separate contradictory realities. He clearly loved the attention, the control during his trials.
Choosing to represent himself.
Exactly. Which, as the YouTube transcript notes, probably helped convict him, but definitely fed his ego, his inflated sense of self.
Offering to help catch the Green River Killer while on death row, more manipulation.
Oh, absolutely. A chilling example of that need to exert control, even then.
And the final confessions, the YouTube source said they were often inconsistent.
Right. Seemed more like a tactic, didn't it? To delay execution, maintain control right to the very end.
Beneath the charm, sources suggest deep insecurity.
Yes. Struggled with real connection, difficult communication under stress, even small habits like habitual nose-picking, nail-biting, hints of underlying anxiety.
The expert in the YouTube video made that interesting point about the paradox.
Oh yeah, claiming not to understand social behavior, but mimicking it perfectly to lure a victim.
Faking empathy.
Precisely. Using it as a tool to achieve his horrific goals.
The cultural impact is undeniable. For so many people, serial killer just meant Ted Bundy.
His case really blasted that concept into the mainstream consciousness. All the media coverage, books, documentaries, films, It's contributed to this lasting notoriety,
Sometimes, as the sources warn, bordering on glamorization.
which is incredibly dangerous. We need to be careful about that.
But his case did lead to some important changes, right? Like better communication between police forces.
Absolutely. The lack of info sharing in the 70s was such a vulnerability his case exposed. It spurred vital improvements there.
And sparked wider discussions.
Definitely. About potential dangers of violent porn, the importance of mental health, childhood trauma. Even that VW Beetle became this, like, chilling symbol of his crimes.
Okay, finally, his last moments. Execution, January 24, 1989.
Electric chair. His final words gave love to family and friends. But no apology, no acknowledgement of the victim's suffering. Speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Complete lack of remorse right to the end.
Completely. Body cremated, ashes scattered in the Cascade Mountains, where he dumped so many victims. A disturbing final act, almost symbolic.
And even after death, that morbid fascination continues. Hybristophilia, you called it?
Yeah, the sexual attraction to criminals.
Yeah.
It's a truly unsettling part of his legacy that some people are still drawn to him in that way.
So wrapping up this deep dive, we've seen how Bundy's charm was just a mask for these brutal, horrific methods.
And how systemic weaknesses, police limitations back then, combined with his own cunning, let him operate for so tragically long.
But the most important takeaway,
Has to be the victims, the devastating, irreversible loss. Their future stolen. It's absolutely crucial we remember them, the tragedy of their stolen lives, not the monster who took them.
on that vital point, here's a final thought for everyone listening. How have things like societal factors, media portrayals, changes in law enforcement shaped how we even understand serial killers today? What lessons can we really learn from the Bundy case to prevent future tragedies? And maybe, how do we actively resist that dangerous fascination with the killers themselves? What's our responsibility in deglamorizing these figures, ensuring memory prioritizes the victims and the enduring pain of their loss?